Monsters! They aren't scary anymore. There may have been a time when Dracula, Frankenstein, and even the generic zombie were the scariest thing to not walk the earth. But now each of them have fallen into oversaturation. I am not going to be afraid of you while you're trying to sell me cereal. Unfortunately for us though, all those monsters were thought up in the 1800s, over a century ago, so it becomes difficult for anyone living to remember a time when they were actually scared of them. But we do have an equivalent, going through the same rise and fall, the biggest pop cultural monster of the last century, the xenomorph.
What the hell are you doing, man? It's a cat.
Alien, by Ridley Scott, is a science fiction horror movie released in 1979. That is 45 years of cultural change it's had to stand up to. And to this day, it's an amazing movie, and I think any fan of the genre would love it, despite the few places it's aged. The film opens on multiple long takes of empty rooms in the ship, and it's awesome. Ridley Scott definitely isn't my favourite director, but his set design is unmatched. The space feels cold and distant, yet lived in. It doesn't have that sterilised, perfectly clean look of modern sci-fi. All the machines on the ship are chunky, oversized, insanely complex, and covered in buttons and switches that are very difficult to make sense of. Today this would be referred to as retrofuturism, but this movie was made in the 70s, so it was just regular futurism. We also get introduced to the characters here, and while the specifics of them aren't really important to this video, I do want to touch on the level of realism each and every one has. They interact so naturally and feel developed and have their own little squabbles and individual things that are important to each of them, and in addition to that, they're all on pretty even ground at this point from a story perspective. If you came into this film knowing absolutely nothing about it, you'd get no indication that Ripley was the main character until about 30 minutes in. This is important because it stops the movie from feeling like a movie. It feels like I'm seeing real, vulnerable people who won't have any main character plot armor. It also helps to develop Ripley's character indirectly, showing that she's just someone who was doing her job, and mostly just happened to take charge and survive as the events of the film called for it.
If you have any trouble, I'll be on the bridge.
So, our inciting incident is the ship getting a distress beacon from an unknown planet, and being contractually obligated to take a look.
The penalty of total forfeiture of shares.
A few important things happen here. Firstly, the second they land, the ship's hull becomes damaged. The sense of danger on the planet is immediate because of this. Secondly, the planet itself. It's dark and hostile, almost unlivable. The weather conditions make it incredibly difficult to see anything and again, puts the characters in immediate danger. The crew comes across an extremely large structure. It's warped and otherworldly. While the human ships are blocky and angular, this is almost completely rounded with a strange horseshoe shape and no apparent recognizable features that a ship or building would have. Ridley Scott made the set designs in the ships perfect. H.R. Giger made the alien structure perfect. In case you didn't know, H.R. Giger was a science fiction artist whose expertise was art involving a mixture of organic and artificial materials, which is very much apparent throughout the film. He is quite possibly the best sci-fi artist in history, and one of the best horror artists as well. Inside this structure, the characters find long-dead alien corpses, described as fossilized. These corpses are sat inside large, gun-like machines, their bodies completely moulded into the seats they sat in. With the corpses being so large and clearly advanced in technology, it begs the question, what killed them? The characters come across a field of alien eggs. There are hundreds, possibly thousands of them, all in lines. The eggs are leathery and fleshy, closer to a shark egg than any kind of egg-laying land creature we're more familiar with. The eggs are surrounded with this otherworldly mist that gives them an air of mystery. We see the eggs are translucent, seeing the strange creature writhing inside, somehow still alive after what must have been centuries. It has big flaps on the top that open, revealing the placenta inside, just before the creature under the placenta attacks the helmet of Kane, the character investigating. But just as the creature attacks, it cuts away. This is perfect. The best horror is created by the unknown, and the fact we never get to see exactly what happened in this moment allows us to imagine something much worse than any filmmaker can write. The characters who left the ship return, cane in hand, and beg to be let back in so he can be saved. Ripley refuses.
I can't do that, and if you were in my position, you'd do the same.
This is another feature of realistic characters in horror. Realistic characters make realistic and good decisions. Way too often in horror, we have characters making awful decisions, one after the other, and all we're left thinking is, I just wouldn't do that. It really kills the fear, knowing that whatever the threat is can easily be avoided by just not making really bad choices. Having characters act realistically allows the audience to insert themselves into the situation without it ever feeling contrived. The science officer Ash lets them in, because he's a snivelling prick, and we see the effect the creature had on Kane. The helmet has been completely broken through, like the glass has been burned and melted, and this crab-like creature is gripped onto his head with its long, sharp, claw-like limbs, and its tail wrapped around its neck, tightening as it's touched. It looks painful and violating as it stays attached to his face. Upon attempting to remove this creature, they make a very small cut on its bony limbs, and it immediately begins to bleed an acidic substance. This substance burns through 3 layers of the ship. This is why the location of the first film being a ship is so important. Not only is this acid defense mechanism dangerous to the people they touch it, but it puts the hull of the entire ship at risk. The creature is now effectively unkillable via normal means. After a few scenes of character building dialogue, they return to the medical bay to find the creature missing. It soon appears completely dead, only having the reflex of it tightening its grip when touched. Kane awakens, seemingly normal. Everything appears to be fine. We get a scene at dinner where everything's so casual, everyone's joking, having a good time, eating. It's as if nothing ever happened. Now, from our perspective, this seems silly, because we know what the creature is, we know what it does. But think of it from the perspective of the characters and audiences at the time. They have no way of knowing that the alien we saw wasn't the alien being referred to in the title, nor that its sudden death was part of its life cycle. Kane begins to choke violently. Blood erupts from his chest, leaving everyone shocked as a long, pink, slender creature begins to emerge from his chest cavity. Pause. Let's talk about sex. The design of the alien is inherently sexual. Not in a I'm horny while I write this way, but as a core human reaction. This film uses the inherent psychological effects of sexual assault to make its monster scarier. Its life cycle literally involves forced impregnation, and the young form of the alien is designed to subconsciously appear phallic. This is most likely due to the influence of Geiger, who would often include human genitalia and phallic objects in his art to induce discomfort. There are so many more examples of this, but I don't want my channel to be deleted, so this is all I'm going to say on this for the rest of the video. After seeing this tiny creature scamper off, the crew immediately organises a plan to catch it. Again, realistic characters. By having them think about how they're going to kill it, it makes the alien appear scarier when those plans fail. As a member gets separated, we get a first look at the true potential of the alien. It silently drops from the ceiling tail first, and towers over the character Brett. We don't see much here, mostly just the size, the teeth, the saliva, and how quickly this thing can kill. That second mouth that you're probably familiar with shoots out like a stunner. You know, those things they use to lobotomize cows in slaughterhouses?
Here's a demonstration.
A lot of the rest of the film is individuals or small groups of people getting isolated and then killed by the alien. It's interesting that despite its size and killing power, it never brute forces its way through anything. It's an ambush predator, surprisingly agile for its size, crawling through tight spaces to catch you off guard. It's not all perfect. There are definitely points where I can tell it's just a guy in a suit, but it remains well done. The last kill is the most important though, as it's the first time we get to see the full body. It's covered in tubes and pipes, spines sticking out of its back like exhaust pipes. But it's also distinctly organic, mostly seen in the saliva and overall wetness of it. I also want to mention the subplot with Ash, the science officer. He's a replicant, like from Blade Runner, and he has been given the task of capturing the alien and bringing it back to the company, most importantly dictating that the crew is expendable. This is important to the fear for one reason and one reason alone. No one is coming to help you. The company, your only lifeline this far into space, is more concerned with the monster's well-being than yours. In the final act, Ripley blows up the ship and escapes in an escape shuttle. Soon it's revealed that the alien was hiding on the shuttle. This really displays the intelligence of it. This seemingly mindless killing machine has somehow figured out exactly where it needed to go to survive. Ripley only survives due to it getting stuck within the space it had hidden itself. This is important as in a lot of horror, characters get into bad situations because they were unlucky. Here, luck is the only reason she lived. Had this not have happened, Ripley certainly would have died. That's not to say she has no agency, however. She immediately thinks of a way to use the ship's functions to flush it out and then shoot out the airlock. But even after that, it attempts to get back in through the thrusters, which really exemplifies how difficult it is to finish off, with only another boost of the thrusters getting rid of it. And Ripley is left, the sole survivor, alone, drifting through space, possibly forever. She survived, but she's still lost. There's no winning against this thing. In total, 6 people were killed and 1 alien died. Hey, you made it halfway through the video. If you like what you see, you should like, subscribe, and put a framed picture of me on your bedside table to caress longingly in the night.
Game over, man. It's game over. What the fuck are we gonna do now? What are we gonna do?
Aliens, directed by James Cameron, is the direct sequel to Alien, taking place 50 years after the events of the original. I like this. Having Ripley drift in space for so long keeps the consequences of the original ending in the first movie. If a salvage team rescued her after only a couple weeks or something, it would void out the impact of that ending. In fact, the majority of the first act is Ripley dealing with these consequences. She has constant nightmares about what happened and is in a lot of legal trouble thanks to her blowing up the ship, with no one believing her about this alien she encountered. During this conversation, the planet the Nostromo landed on in the first film is mentioned, now terraformed with over 60 families living there.
How many colonists?
I don't know, 60, maybe 70 families.
Immediately setting stakes as Ripley and we as an audience know how much danger they'll be in. Surprise, surprise, the families go missing, and Ripley is asked to go with a team of Marines to go to the planet, and I love how long she refuses for. It's incredibly realistic that as much as she cares about the lives of those people, she has a mistrust of the company and is traumatized by the events she lived through in the first film. But that trauma is what inevitably changes her mind as her nightmares cause her to worry about the creatures coming back for her, only agreeing on the promise that the mission is only to destroy them.
But to wipe them out.
That's the plan.
Remember how much I praised the first movie for its realistic dialogue and characters? I really felt like it would be continued in the sequel. The first few scenes have this realistic edge to them, but the second the Marines are introduced, all of that is thrown out the window.
Have you ever been mistaken for a man?
No. Have you?
Every single one of them are the tropiest, fakest characters I've ever seen. That's not to say they're badly written, they just aren't real. They're big, tough, one-liner dispensing action movie protagonists. Because at the end of the day, that's what this is. Yeah, in the sequel, with a change of director came a change of genre. We've gone from science fiction horror to just straight up action, with all the expected cliches and story beats that come with it. I like Aliens, but if I have one huge criticism, it's that it's just more of the same. The first movie was so unique for its genre, and this one, despite being well done and iconic, really doesn't do anything all that special. It's also at this point where the name is given.
That a xenomorph may be involved.
It's a really good name. Incredibly iconic now, but when the film was written, it was meant to be a more generic term. Xeno refers to other or foreign, while morph just refers to its shape. You might have noticed that up until now, I've been calling it an alien, or a creature, or even a monster. I did this to stick with the chronology of the film releases. I'm also just going to avoid the words facehugger and chestburster. These are fan-made names, and they're incredibly stupid. Landing on the planet, it's much less hostile before, due to it being terraformed, which is a good time to mention the set design being far worse than the first. It's not bad, but it's a lot less real and a lot less interesting, and it's more just a movie set. It's an unfortunate symptom of changing directors. If you go from someone who's known for his fantastic set design to someone who's known for something else, you lose a lot of the visual identity of the first film. Now, the first run-through exploring the planet is very well done. We get to see a lot of the impact the xenomorphs have without having them be on screen. There are acid burns tunneling giant holes through multiple floors. They find one survivor, a little girl, terrified of everyone and too traumatized to speak. This is really good storytelling. It allows us to infer the destructive power the xenomorphs have without ever having to see them, or just be told they're powerful. As we go deeper into the colony, the walls are covered in a strange substance secreting goo, like an organism of its own. People are found disgustingly cocooned into the walls with dead parasites laying around them. One is even alive, clearly in pain and terrified. It's a horrific scene that really ups the body horror of the first movie. As they try and talk to her, a xenomorph rips through her chest and is instantly burned to death. Hopefully that doesn't become a theme. The first xenomorph attack happens, with the group of Marines being jumped by several, and the way they kill has changed significantly. The first movie's alien was an ambush predator. It would hide until the very last moment and then kill quickly and efficiently. It really showed how much of a perfect killing machine it was. These aliens, however, seem more content to just run at people and then throw them around a bunch. The first direct kill we see from one of them is a Marine accidentally being lit on fire and then falling over a banister. It's really over the top and a far cry from the realistic brutality of the first movie. We also get to see that the acid sucks now. Like, we get to see the big hole it made earlier in the movie, but honestly it has no relevance later on. Many xenomorphs get shot and exploded with no real damage to the environment, and while a couple of people do get killed by the acid blood, it isn't nearly destructive anymore. This is the acid that can burn through layers upon layers of steel no problem. You would not have a face anymore. And after this scene, and the one right after in the jet, we get no xenomorphs for 30 minutes of the movie. No explanation, it's not like they don't know where they are, or the aliens saw them and they are intelligent. The script demanded that the characters don't need to survive for a bit, so the threat just leaves. I'm not saying that the movie needs to be all alien all the time, but give me a reason as to why they're waiting. Because that's what it feels like they're doing. Waiting for their turn. This movie is fucking turn-based. The worst example of this is when Ripley and the little girl get locked in a room with two of the parasites by evil businessman Trademark. And for several minutes, nothing happens. They just have a standoff because the plot demands that Ripley needs to survive. Suddenly the parasites are blind and deaf until the last minute when the other characters come to rescue them. Then they can attack to immediately get removed right after. The aliens cut the power, then attack, which really showed the discrepancy of how intelligent these aliens are moment to moment. When they're off screen, they're smart enough to know they have to break the wiring. When they're on screen, all they know how to do is mindlessly rush people while they get killed en masse. Of course they're still a threat. At this point in the film, the overwhelming majority of the cast is already dead, and we still lose a few in this fight. But now, instead of each individual alien feeling like a threat, it feels like they only win because they have a numbers advantage. They're mostly just weird-looking zombies in this movie. So, in the finale of the movie, Ripley meets the alien queen with his gross-looking egg sac. And the weird thing about the scene is that it really doesn't do anything. Sure, they have a good reason at first. Ripley threatens to burn the eggs, so the queen sends the other xenomorphs away to protect them. But after that, Ripley burns them anyway. You'd expect the queen or the other xenomorphs that won't be too far away to do something, but no, kinda just stares and screams. Even when Ripley starts shooting the queen, destroying the egg sac, it does nothing. It just sits there and takes it. Only after Ripley finishes and leaves does the queen decide to start following, because now it's her turn. Why is this movie written like a D&D session? So, like the first movie, they escape in a ship, but the queen latches onto it and finally kills someone, in a really brutal way too. It does kinda suck that the new big enemy for this movie has a kill count of exactly one person, and that person's a robot, and they actually survive, so the main monster of this film successfully kills nothing. At least we get to see Ripley in a mech. I remember this being really cool, and conceptually, it is. In practice, it's kind of lame. Ripley just moves really slow, which could still work if they didn't account for it by having the queen just kinda stand there and wait for a turn. Like, I can't stress enough how weird the pacing of the action in this movie is, especially towards the latter half. Don't take my word for it, just go watch it. You will notice. Exactly like the first movie again, Ripley sends out the queen through the airlock and it dies. Remember how in the first movie, the alien tried to get back in to really hammer home how hard it is to kill? Not here, just dies. Just a worse version of the first movie's ending. And all 4 survivors have a nice happy ending where they get to go home. Aww. How nice. I hate consequences anyway. I just want to end this segment by saying I don't hate this movie. It's dumb fun, and I had fun watching it. I just hate how nerfed the aliens are here, and it just has a ton of really weird choices. In the end, 15 people died, but many, many more aliens died.
The apocalypse is upon us. Let us be ready.
Alien 3, or Alien Cubed, is a film directed by David Fincher. Yes, that David Fincher. Fight Club David Fincher. Now for the other 2 movies I covered, I vaguely went through the story to give context. This movie will not get that luxury. Alien Cubed has a story so bad that I refuse to waste your time or insult your intelligence by telling you about it. So we're exclusively talking about the alien here. This movie's alien was incubated by a dog instead of a person, so it has 4 legs. So I guess the aliens copy the DNA of their host or some shit. I can't talk about this movie for long without mentioning this. The effects of this movie are, no exaggeration, the worst I have seen in a professional product. Firstly, the alien's colour is inconsistent to the point I don't know what colour it's supposed to be. Sometimes it's red, sometimes it's black, sometimes it's Fallout 3 green for some reason. In most shots where the effects are used, you can clearly see the green screen lines because no one could be bothered to remove them. The alien has absolutely no presence, often being the wrong size for the area around it, or moving in a direction that makes no sense. And I know what some of you are thinking. Oh, it was 1992, the technology wasn't there yet. Firstly, Cool World came out in 1992, and it looks leagues better than this. And secondly, if you're making a movie and one of your ideas ends up looking this bad, maybe you should try something else? Like a new career, for example. I cannot get over how bad this looks. During production, they had the idea of putting a dog in prosthetics to make the alien, and that would have looked better than this. The floating PNG file I use to represent myself in these videos has more aesthetic cohesion and presence than the monster in this $50 million shit heap. Moving on, what does the monster actually do? Not much. The alien has two action plans. One is just running at people because writing ambush predators is too hard, and the second is pulling people into vents, which it does like 4 times in a row because writing ambush predators doing different things is too hard. In this movie, the alien also likes to eat the bodies, which I'm not a huge fan of. I like the idea of the killing being senseless, meaningless, because when it has no reason for what it's doing, it'll never have a reason to stop. There's also another alien queen in this movie. Ripley is pregnant with it, don't ask. But it's fine because it dies when she kills herself, don't ask. I hate this movie. I hate everyone involved with this movie. Watching this movie made me never want to watch a movie again because I'm watching filmmakers and actors that I know are talented just squirt more money than I'll ever see in my lifetime down the toilet. I can't be bothered to check kill counts, but none of these characters felt like people, so I guess 0 people died. So these 3 movies exemplify the changes in the xenomorph the most. From a monster that kills you, to a monster you kill, to a monster that's secretly a dog in a costume. Alien as a franchise has never stopped. Alien movies kept coming out, getting progressively worse, then better, then worse again. There were Alien games which varied in quality, from the beloved Alien Isolation to the behated Aliens Colonial Marines. But what really put that nail in the coffin for the xenomorph? Cameos. So, dear audience, I ask you, how am I supposed to take a monster seriously after watching it sing Weezer?
I look just like Buddy Holly. Oh, and no Mary Tyler Moore.